That crazy feeling in America when the sun is hot on the streets and the music comes out of the jukebox or from a nearby funeral, that's what Robert Frank has captured in tremendous photographs taken as he traveled on the road around practically 48 states in an old used car and with the agility, mystery, genius, sadness and strange secrecy of a shadow photographed scenes that have never been seen before on film. To Robert Frank, I now give this message. You got eyes. And I say, that little old lonely elevator girl looking up sighing in an elevator full of blurred demons, what's her name and address? When I started this channel, The Americans was the first book to enter the list of works that I wanted to cover. It's one of my favorite photo books, the photo book that I have read and reread the most, and that plays a major role in my understanding of photography. But I was sort of scared of making a video about The Americans, as if I felt the weight of the book's impact in the history of photography and photo books, and to add to that responsibility, my admiration for Robert Frank's work. I was afraid I had nothing special to say, and let's not forget that there are many videos on YouTube that do The Americans justice. But last year I came across a book that sort of freed me from this responsibility, and made me understand that, at least in this regard, any opinion is an opinion worth hearing. I'm talking about Jason Eskenazi's By the Glow of the Jukebox, The Americans list. But before we talk about Jason's book, which is what brings us here today, let me briefly show you and talk about The Americans. First published in France by Delpire in 1958 and in the United States in 1959 with a preface by Jack Kerouac, Robert Frank's The Americans gifts us with 83 photographs that changed the course of 20th century photography. In the 1950s, Robert Frank received a grant from the Guggenheim Foundation to capture and put together a visual record of the US. And in 1955 and 1956, he traveled throughout the country and made the photographs that would result in this book. While finding beauty in simplicity and cataloging certain icons of Americana, such as cars, flags, jukeboxes, and the road itself, Frank looked beneath the surface of American life and unveiled a society struggling with racism and whose culture of consumption was rapidly expanding. At first, the book wasn't well received in the States, as it didn't capture the American dream of the 1950s. When the National Gallery of Art celebrated the 50th anniversary of the book in 2009, Sarah Greeno, the curator, said that popular photography asked a number of writers to critique the book, and almost all of them were very negative. It was described as a sad poem by a very sick person. And Robert Frank once said that the Museum of Modern Art wouldn't even sell the book, but the younger people caught on. His approach, intuition, and conventional and carefree style made The Americans a revolutionary piece of work. This powerful and provocative book is simultaneously a poem, personal, and a historical document of the mid-century United States. As I said before, today I want to talk about By the Glow of the Jukebox, The Americans list, published in 2012 by Red Hook Editions. This book was put together by Jason Eskenazi as a consequence of him working as a security guard at the Met when the museum received the 50-year anniversary exhibition of The Americans. Jason, who is also a photographer, took this opportunity to study and get to know Robert's work. He would arrive early to work and ask to get certain sections where the exhibition was being shown, and would take advantage of being there on Mondays when the museum was closed to the general public, and you would hear the special talks and events that were put on regarding the show. While at work, he would ask his photography colleagues what was their favorite picture, and after he quit his job as security guard, he went after them to ask them why. This gave us 276 testimonies, which I'm not not going through all of them today. I picked 5, which I'm going to read to you while showing you the photograph that we referred to, and I will leave you at the end with a conversation that June, Jason and Robert had regarding his favorite photo, so you can stop the video and read for yourself. At least for me, this felt like a more genuine experience. For me, the last image in The Americans of Frank's wife and sleepy-eyed son in the car on the anonymous road is the one that I reflect on the most. While the book is a powerful commentary on a very specific time in America, this last image reminds us that we are all living through our own biopic. And as creatures of emotion, it's important to express that narrative in whatever way fits our nature. That image pulls me back into the work, which I like to remember is really a collection of entries in a diary. Well, this took far too long and tried your patience many times over, I suspect. But life can get in the way of the best of intentions, and my life was loaded with twists and turns this year. And I have neglected you and your requests, so I apologize. But I kept being pushed to the back burner. Just the way things are sometimes, so thank you for your understanding and patience. The photograph of Roberts that was a significant turning point for me is the Canal Street, New Orleans photograph of people just walking by the camera. This image had always puzzled me, as if it was saying, see this undifferentiated mass of pedestrians? It's worthy of an image. But why, I asked myself dozens of times as I paid through The Americans. Why did Robert make this photograph? What was he thinking? Why did he use it in the book when it seems so generalized? Over time, I came to realize that the reasons for making a photograph and what it may mean to you later are two different things. And as a third step in this process, what it means to somebody else is open for misreading. This image came to life for me years after I first puzzled about it, when I was undertaking a transformation in my own work and realized that Robert had planted a seed that was then sprouting. It's a really difficult question to ask which single picture in Robert Frank's The Americans means the most to me, because so many of them have been a great inspiration since I first saw the book as a young photographer. After thinking about your question and looking through the book again and again these past few days, I keep coming back to the image of the black nurse with a white uniform holding the very white baby taken in Charleston, South Carolina. This photograph captures the essence of racism and servitude in America for all time. The contrast between the expression of cold entitlement on the very white baby's face and the calm resignation of the black nurse that is holding the white baby only amplifies the great differences in their skin color and positions in life. In the original printing of The Americans, the content in this photograph is enhanced by the blown-out whiteness of everything in the frame except the black nurse's face. When I first saw this photograph as a young woman who wanted to be a documentary photographer, I recognized the power that great emotional content in photography could have. This is a great photograph that still inspires me because it is the quintessential photographic statement about race and class in this country. At that time, the toilet was an extremely unlikely place to make a photo. It reminds me of the Edward Weston urinal photographed with cool aesthetic. But here the emotions rise, like a smell that can only come from such a place. I can empathize with both men, the shoe shiner who has to stay in there for many hours, and the traveler who will be gone in another minute or two and soon replaced. The toilet is a place for contemplation. But what can a man who spends his life there think about? One person is stuck there while the other en route to somewhere. Yet, both men are caught in the same pathos. One of my childhood jobs was to shine my father's shoes. I can still remember the sound of the brush and the black cold chunks of polish that I had to crush in the tin that stayed under my fingernails long after his shoes were put back in the closet. I also think about all the thousands of men who stood there in front of the empty urinals for a minute, did their business and left never to return because it is a toilet in a railway station. It's transitory as both a station and the serendipity of a moment never to be repeated. These three men met, are in a toilet and never met again. In my mind, Robert went to take a pee and saw this and decided before he finished that he could snap a photo and did so after he washed his hands. So it's a triangle. The photographer is part of the picture and the pathos of the other two men. And yet in years to come, I would also become the traveler and the photographer too. Barbershop Through Screen Door, McClellanville, South Carolina. From the moment I first saw a print, Robert Frank's Barbershop in McClellanville, South Carolina, the image has lingered with me. A sign, I've learned to trust over the years, of a truly poetic image. Like the strongest and most resonant poems, the image sends me into a kind of reverie each time I view it. I think this has something to do with the fact that it's a reflection, one that blurs inside and outside, like a daydream. So, for me at least, Frank's mysterious barbershop blurs into the barbershop in my small town in southern Indiana where I was born. Like Frank, I too pressed up against the screen door, saw into the interior thanks to my own shadow. Come to think of it, the screen door itself is somehow quintessentially American. I don't recall coming across that many screen doors in Europe, for instance. Welcoming yet protective, practical yet vulnerable, luring both Junebugs and photographers alike. Last but not least, Jason filled Testimony 130 with what I can only imagine is an homage to Chris Hondros, who promised to answer but was killed on the job. It simply says, Chris Hondros and Tim Hetherington were killed in Misrata, Libya on April 20, 2011. And I recommend all of you check Hondros, the documentary that tells Chris's story. For me, as a person who loves to get to know the works of others, this book made me feel like I was conversing with these photographers, as if I was getting to know them, the person behind the photographs. In fact, at a certain stage, Jason writes that many of the answers revealed much more about the photographers themselves, and this is absolutely true. To read this book is a very personal experience, at least for me. It's one that gets you closer to the photographers, to Jason, to Robert, and to the work that probably connects more photographers than any other. Again, I highly recommend this book to anyone, photographer or not. Jason leaves us small gems in his intro and outro, and this is a very easy and delightful read. With this said, I have to stress that any fan of Robert Frank or the Americans must have a copy of this book. It will further and deepen your understanding of this work. Thank you so much for watching. I will leave links to everything that I talked about, from Jason's book to the Americans and other sources on Robert Frank, in the description. And if you enjoy this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you'll be notified when I post again. See you in the next video.